The first thing you're going to learn about is how to hook up your MPC60. First, plug in the power. Make sure it has a good, solid connection to the power socket, because if power is accidentally removed during operation, all memory will be lost. Next, connect two cables from the left and right stereo out jacks to two inputs on your mixer or amplifier. If you use a mixer, pan the two signals left and right. If you're going to be creating keyboard sequences, you'll need to connect the MIDI ports to a MIDI keyboard and synthesizers. For this demonstration, I'll be using an Akai MX73 master keyboard to record sequences and two Akai S900 samplers as sound sources. So in this system, I've connected the MIDI out of the MX73 to the MIDI in number 1 of the MPC60 and the MIDI out number 1 of the MPC60 to the MIDI in of the first S900. Then I connected the MIDI through of the first S900 to the MIDI in of the second S900. This type of connection is called daisy chaining. On the back of the MPC60 are 4 independent MIDI output ports, but for now I'm only using MIDI output number 1. To learn how to use the other 3 MIDI output ports, read section 9 of your owner's manual, MIDI functions. There are other connections on the rear panel, such as the foot switches, tape sync, the echo send and returns, and the individual mix outputs. These will be explained in further sections of the video manual. Now that we're hooked up, let's turn it on. First, I'll insert the disc labeled Studio Drum Set and Preset Sequences into the disk drive. Now, I turn the rear panel power switch to the on position. The MPC60 is now loading the drum sounds and the preset demo sequences from the disk, and it'll take about 1.5 minutes to do this. Just like every other sampler or high-capacity sequencer, you'll need to reload the drum sounds and sequences every time you turn the power on. Now, in this case, we loaded the disc containing what we call the studio drum set. However, if you want a more ambient, live-sounding drum set, insert the rock drum set and preset sequences disc before powering up. Once the disc is finished loading, the LCD display switches to this display called the Play Record screen. This screen is displayed while all playing and recording of sequences is done and is the main operating screen of the MPC60. By the way, if you ever get confused and want to return to this screen, press the Main Screen key. The first thing I'm going to show you is how to enter data and change settings on the MPC60 using the cursor keys, the data control, the plus and minus keys, and the numeric keypad. First, notice that there is a small blinking block in the upper left corner of the LCD screen. This is called the cursor. Press the 4 cursor keys, up, down, left, and right. The cursor moves in that direction. Notice that it doesn't move one character at a time, but rather skips groups of characters, landing only in specific locations. These locations are called data fields. Most data fields have 2 parts, a field name and the data for that field, separated by a colon. For example, the cursor is now located in the upper left corner of the Play Record screen in a data field labeled SQNC. This is an abbreviation for sequence, and this is the data field used to indicate the sequence number which is currently active. This field currently contains a 1, indicating that the MPC60 is standing ready to play sequence number 1 of its 99 sequences. To change the value of this field, use the data control. As you rotate the data control, you can feel notches. Turning the control 1 notch to the right adds a 1 to the sequence number. Turning it to the left subtracts a 1 from the sequence number. I could also use the plus and minus keys. Pressing the plus key has the same effect as turning the data control 1 notch to the right. It adds a 1 to the field contents. Pressing the minus key has the same effect as turning the control 1 notch to the left. It subtracts a 1. There's a third way to change the contents, by using the numeric keypad. For example, to select sequence number 45, I type 4, then 5, then enter. Now, the MPC60 stands ready to play sequence number 45. Whenever you change the contents of a numeric data field using the numeric keypad, you must also type enter after you type the numbers. So far, I've demonstrated how to change the sequence number. This is because the cursor is located in the sequence number field. However, if I move the cursor to any other field and use the data control, plus and minus keys, or the numeric keypad, the contents of the newly selected field will change. So the basic rule is to change any parameter displayed on the screen, move the cursor to it, and enter the new data. Also, each of the various command keys presents a different screen, and each of these screens has its own set of unique data fields. For example, here's the disk key, the tempo screen, the erase screen, the timing correct screen, and then back to the main screen. In addition to data fields containing numbers, there is another type of data field called a choice field. Instead of numbers, a choice field displays a pre-programmed word or phrase. While the cursor is in one of these fields, turning the data control selects, with each successive notch, a new word or phrase from a pre-programmed list of choices. For example, let's go to the timing correct screen, where the cursor is currently resting in the note value field. At the cursor is the phrase 16th note. Now if I turn the data control one notch to the right, the field's contents change to 16th note triplets. By turning the data control either left or right, I can select one of 7 different choices, because this choice field happens to have 7 pre-programmed choices. However, each choice field has a different number of choices. For example, the shift timing field directly below has only 2 choices, earlier and later. The plus and minus keys may also be used in choice fields, but the numeric keypad has no effect. These are the main types of data fields. There are some exceptions, and I will explain those in further sections. There are 2 additional things to learn in order to get around on the MPC60, the 4 soft keys and the help key. The 4 soft keys are located at the top of the commands section, labeled soft key 1 through soft key 4. The functions of these 4 keys change depending on what is currently displayed on the LCD screen. Notice that the words soft key 1 through soft key 4 are printed just below the LCD screen, enclosed in angle brackets. And above this, in the bottom line of the LCD, are 4 short phrases, also enclosed in angle brackets. These 4 phrases indicate the functions of the 4 soft keys while the play record screen is showing. However, if I press the erase key, notice that the bottom line has changed. Now the 4 soft keys have 4 different functions, this time related to the erase function. Before we proceed, let's return to the play record screen by pressing the main screen key. The other special key I mentioned is the help key. When you press and hold the help key, a full paragraph of explanation about the function you're currently using will appear on the screen, as long as you hold help. For example, with the cursor in the sequence number field, I'll press and hold help. The screen now shows information about selecting the sequence number. Now, I'll release help and move the cursor one position to the right to the sequence name field. Now when I press help, the screen explains how to change the sequence name. For every field of every screen in the MPC60, there's a different paragraph of help information. It's like having a built-in electronic reference manual. Now that we've covered the basics of entering data, let's move on to playing the drum pads and the associated keys in the area of the pads. The drum pads are dynamic. The harder I play them, the louder they will sound. Notice that when I play repeated strikes of a single drum, such as the crash cymbal, they all play simultaneously. They don't cut each other off. It's possible to defeat the dynamics of the pads by pressing the full level key. Now they all play at full dynamic level regardless of how hard I strike the pads. To return to normal dynamics, press the full level key once again. It's also possible to play a single drum at 16 fixed dynamic levels using the 16 levels key. To do this, I first play the drum I want to use this effect on. For example, I'll use the snare 1 pad, then I press the 16 levels key. Now all 16 pads play the snare drum, but at 16 different fixed dynamic levels, from 1 to 16. To return to normal operation, I press the 16 levels key once again. The MPC60 can hold up to 32 different drums in memory at one time. However, there are only 16 play pads. To play the second 16 drums, I press the Bank 2 key. Currently, the Section 16 drums contain 16 different bass guitar pitches, but there could be 16 additional drums, or 16 percussion, or 16 sound effects, etc. The names of the first 16 drums are printed above and to the left of each pad. The names of the second 16 drums are drum 1 through drum 16, indicated by the number above and to the right of each pad. To return to the first 16 drums, I press the bank 2 key once again. Now the hi-hat is a special case. Just as the decay time of a real hi-hat cymbal is controlled by how hard you press on the hi-hat pedal, the decay time of the hi-hat in the MPC60 is controlled by the setting of the hi-hat decay slider. Notice that in addition to changing the decay time of the hi-hat, the sound of the hi-hat also changes. This is because as I move the slider, I'm automatically switching between 3 different hi-hat sounds. One for the closed hi-hat, one for a slightly open hi-hat, and one for a fully open hi-hat. The final key in this section is the hi-hat after key. Normally, the hi-hat slider only has an effect on hi-hat notes as you play them. It doesn't affect hi-hats which play in sequences. However, if you press the after key and the light goes on, the slider will also affect hi-hats which are playing back in sequences. Now let's learn how to adjust the stereo drum mixer. First, I'll press the drum mix key. The LCD screen shows a graphic simulation of a 16-channel mixer with 16 volume sliders and 16 rotary pan controls. To adjust the volume of a drum, first press that drum's pad and the small triangle-shaped pointer will point to that drum in the mixer. Now, turning the data control will move that drum slider up or down. To adjust the pan position of the same drum, press the cursor up key and the small triangle now points upwards. Now, when I turn the data control, the position of the small graphic pan knob changes. You see it there on the snare 1 drum. To adjust the volume and pan positions of the second bank of 16 drums, press the bank 2 key. Next, we're going to learn how to play the preset sequences which we loaded in from the startup disk. First, make sure that the play record screen is showing. If it isn't, press the main screen key. Also, move the cursor to the sequence number field in the upper left corner and select sequence 1 if it isn't already selected. Now, find the play start key in the play record section in the lower right corner of the front panel and press it. We're now playing sequence number 1. To play sequence number 2, I change the contents of the sequence number field to 2 by rotating the data control, and then I'll press play start again. Finally, here's how to adjust the playing tempo. Move the cursor 2 positions to the right to the tempo field and enter the desired new tempo. This can be done either while playing or stopped. So what I'll do now is to play this sequence and change the tempo as I'm playing it. To use this key to set the tempo, simply tap the key twice in the time of 2 quarter notes at the desired new tempo. Instantly after the second tap, the tempo field is automatically updated to the new tempo you have just tapped. Tap tempo is very handy if you can play the tempo but don't know the number. The tempo can be entered in this way both while stopped and while playing. There are many other tempo features, including displaying the tempo in frames per beat and inserting mid-sequence tempo changes, but I'm afraid I'm going to have to send you to your manual to learn about them because we are short on time. That's it. We've come to the end of Section 2, the basics. In the next section, we'll learn how to record sequences, so I'll meet you there.